Welcome, everyone. We're so glad to see you tonight. So glad to have you with us. We're going to get started now. And Doreen, just flag if my internet isn't working right, and I'll turn off the video. But for now, I'm glad to see folks. And I am Amy Antonucci. I am a board member for New Hampshire Peace Action. And I'm really glad to welcome you to our Peace and Justice Conversation series online for Monday, March 9th, 2026. Happy day after International Women's Day. Tonight, we are excited to welcome author and longtime New Hampshire friend to be with us, Leo Sandy. He's going to discuss a book that he was one of the co-authors for. It's called PeaceTalk, a Compendium of Hope. One of his co-authors was going to join us, but isn't feeling well, so I don't think she is going to make it. But in any case, we're thrilled to have Leo. Let me say a few things before I turn it over to him. First, I just want to remind folks that New Hampshire Peace Action been in the state for well now over 40 years, educating, mobilizing, and organizing to build a more peaceful and just future for all. And we are grateful for the support that all of you give us. We also want to pause and take a moment to acknowledge that we do our work on the traditional ancestral homelands of the Abenaki, Wabanaki, and Pennacook peoples, past and present. We honor with gratitude those people and the land that we're in relationship. Quick reminder, we love it when you keep your video on. The chat will be for questions long, and later we will do hand raising. So with all that said, let me just introduce Dr. Leo Sandy. I'm having some issues. Okay, let's try that. All right, so let me introduce Leo. Dr. Leo Sandy is a New Hampshire-based educator, a retired school psychologist, and a Vietnam-era veteran. He's known for his extensive work in human development, peace studies, and social justice. He was a professor at Plymouth State, a practicing school psychologist, and a consultant and lecturer at Keene State College. He is now retired and thus busier than ever, he tells us. And we are thrilled that he took the time to write the book and is now joining us to talk about it. So hopefully his internet will behave better than mine. And Leo, I'm turning it over to you.
Okay,
Welcome, Leo.
thank you. Let me hit share and see if we can get this thing going here. I think, yeah. Let's see, slideshow from the start. Okay. Can everyone see that okay?
Looks great.
Okay, so anyway, I wrote this with Ray Perkins, professor emeritus at Plymouth State, philosophy professor. I co-taught two peace studies classes with him for many years, and he made significant contributions to the book. And then Ashley Green, I'll talk a little bit more about her when I talk about the history of it, and a foreword by Thomas Lee. Tom is a biologist, professor, researcher, and social activist, and he's written Battle Babble, and also a book on nuclear war, and so the inspiration that he gave us. So anyway, his book is Battle Babble, Selling War in America. What the book focuses on basically is how language is used to hide the horrors of war, to foment support for war, and to maintain a war once it started. And so all this language is an attempt to again sanitize the whole process. And so after I finished reading the book, I was very inspired, and I said, "Well, we have the language of war. we need the language of peace. We need a book, a sequel to that that focuses on the language of peace. And so I asked Tom if he'd be willing to write that sequel since he wrote the first one. And he said, no, you do it. And so I said, okay. So I enlisted Ray Perkins, who was willing to co-write it with me. And we went on for several years. Ray's health started to decline somewhat, and he kind of bowed out. And I was left kind of in limbo. And then I met Ashley Green, who had just finished a peace studies program, and she was started to teach at Keene State, and so she had a lot of good current knowledge on peace studies, and plus she was young, energetic, a female. So there was so many things about her that I thought would be really good for her to join us. And Ray Perkins was okay with that, and then Ashley joined us, and it took a long time to finish the book because um, you know the, Ashley had three babies in the meantime, so it took us several years to finish it, but we finally did, and. And then there's Tom Lee's nice review. I also recently got a really nice review from a guy named Joshua Becker. I looked him up, and apparently he wrote a very lengthy positive review of the book. And I find out that he is a New York Times bestseller author who has written several books. And so I thought that was really a nice review. Uh, so let's see. So basically, we dedicated the book to Bertrand Russell. Now, Ray Perkins was the president of the Bertrand Russell Society for many years, and so that was part of the of that. Gene Sharp was a former professor of mine. He was the world expert in nonviolence. He started the Albert Einstein Institution in Boston, and so it was apt to name it after him. And Colonel John Barr was a Marine colonel who fought in three wars, and he co-founded Veterans for Peace in New Hampshire, and actually the whole Veterans for Peace, but it started in New Hampshire. And so we thought these would be three fitting people to dedicate the book to. And again, all people who commit themselves to peace, social justice, nonviolence, and the abolition of war. The abolition of war was a centerpiece of John Barr's focus in Veterans for Peace. So the book is set up basically with a definition of terms. We had to be very selective because there are a lot of terms that relate to peace. So we wanted to do that. The whole framework of the book basically, as this Joshua Becker even mentions, that the juxtaposition of all of these activities and perspectives on peace, I think make it strong. Because we see so many people doing so many things over a long period of time that it's kind of it's a very to me it's a strong formula mix, so to speak. The next one was peacemaking individuals, A to Z. Again, we had to be very selective. And we started with Jane Addams and ended with Howard Zinn. And then we talked about the peacemaking organizations, peace studies programs and journals, and world religions. And it's with world religions, I just want to make a comment about that. Religions get a lot of criticism these days for not being very peaceful. Uh, and my feeling was always that the religions really aren't the problem. It's what people take out of religion, what they bring to it. And so if we had better people, they would bring better things out of religion. In fact, if you look at the great peacemakers of the world, many of them are religious. And they seem to hang in there maybe a lot longer than some of us because they see suffering as redemption, at least in Christianity. So, they all these religions have something positive to say about peace, and some of the worst people in the world claim religion too. So, again, it's not the religion itself that's a problem. So we look at Buddhism, Judaism, Christianity, Hinduism, and so forth. And then finally in chapter 6, we wanted to finish the book with with some ways that we can actually, some things we can actually do that might bring about peace, like reforming the UN, for example, and teaching peace studies and peace education in schools, for example. So, so chapter 1. One of the terms that we use is ahimsa. It's a Sanskrit word that translates literally to non-harm, best known as a central component of Mahatma Gandhi's philosophy of nonviolence. It means complete freedom from ill will and anger and hate and an overwhelming love for all. Um, Gandhi was able to succeed because he developed relationships with the key leaders of British colonialism in India, and they came to be very close to him. And that goes with one of his sayings, if you want to get rid of an enemy, make him your friend. And he actually did that with the British authorities. He saw ahimsa as a complete rejection of violence, anger, and hate in word, thought, and deed. And under ahimsa, there's no room for assassination or murder. So total nonviolence. In fact, Gandhi also said, I'm willing to die, but never willing to kill. And chapter 2, again, Jane Addams, she says true peace is not merely the absence of war, it's a presence of justice. So peace is proactive, pro-social. And she was a pacifist during World War I, opposed America's entry into the war, became involved in international peacekeeping. She wrote new ideals for peace and peace and bread in times of war, chaired the Women's Peace Party, served as president of International Congress of Women and Women's International League for Peace and Freedom. And because of her opposition to World War I, she was vilified in the media and expelled from the Daughters of the American Revolution. Uh, the I also gave a talk to at the Daughters of the American Revolution. They invited me, and I spoke on peace is patriotic, and I got kind of mixed results from that group. That was an interesting experience. And then Liu Xiaobo, he says free expression is the basis of human rights, the root of human nature, mother of truth. To kill free speech is to insult human rights, to stifle human nature, and to suppress truth. And this quote reminds me of Tim Snyder's book on freedom, which I highly recommend because he talks a lot about freedom in that book. It's called On Freedom. So anyway, Liu Xiaobo was an outspoken Chinese intellectual, human rights advocate, strong critic of the Chinese Communist government, detained, put under house arrest, and imprisoned numerous times for writing and activism. 96 he was sentenced to 3 years of re-education through labor on charges of rumor mongering, slander, and disturbing the social order. And then in 2009, he was found guilty of inciting subversion of state power. And between 2003 2007, he was president of the Independent Chinese Pen Center, visiting scholar at the University of Oslo and University of Hawaii. He was married to poet and visual artist Liu Zhai. Article 9 Society. I'm not sure how active that is right now. The founder of it, Chuck Overby, taught at Ohio State University in Athens, Ohio, and he died several years ago. So I'm not sure if anyone has taken that over, but it became an international NGO that promotes the protection of Article 9 in the Japanese Constitution, which says basically that that Japan is not allowed to have a standing army. And for 70 years, it has supported Japanese commitment to renounce war as a national right and prohibit the buildup of armed forces. But Article 9 is constantly under threat of being abolished from internal sources in Japan as well as external pressures. My understanding is that the United States is trying to talk Japan to getting rid of Article 9 so that Japan can be armed and possibly become another ally in war with the United States. I'm not exactly sure about that, but that's my understanding. We can maybe talk about that later. Um, and then Combatants for Peace, an organization. This is a group made up of former Palestinian and Israeli fighters, and they tour the world. And it's interesting when they sit at a table, they sit every other one, Israeli, Palestinian, Israeli, Palestinian, and so forth. And they may be sitting next to someone who killed one of their relatives, but they are committed basically to promote peace in the region and in the world. And they're very persuasive. And again, they tour the world, and not too many people know about them. They were in New Hampshire at one time. Uh, and then Chapter 4, the Peace and Justice Studies Association has a large number of people who belong to that. They have conferences, they publish articles, and so forth. And then the Global Directory of Peace Studies and Conflict Resolution Programs has a whole list of them. There used to be a handful of peace studies programs in the world. Now there are several hundred. And so those are growing. They're offering associate's degrees, master's degrees, doctoral degrees, and so forth. And that's very exciting that this has taken on such a growth. And then there's the International Journal of Peace Studies, where people can publish their articles. And then Chapter 5, World Religions. Again, the Quran says the taking of one's innocent life is taking all of mankind, and the saving of one's life is like saving all of mankind. So again, that's from the Quran, and you think that some of the people are not reading this very well in that part of the world. Better than 1,000 hollow words is one word that brings peace, the Buddha. A spiritually illumined soul lives in the world, yet is never contaminated by it, Swami Bhaskar. And the fruit of righteousness is sown in peace of them that makes peace. One of my favorite stories comes from the Torah, and it's about a man walking with his donkey, and the donkey sits, and another person's coming the other way and sees this, but sees this person as his enemy. But then he said, the Torah tells me that if I see somebody with its ass down, I should help pick it up. And so they made friends, and he said, I never knew all along that you were my friend. Favorite story. And then Chapter 6. So one is the thing we want to include peace, social justice, and conflict resolution in school curricula. Of course, at this time, that's the last thing that anybody wants, the way it's going right now. So if we had to teach real peace in this world, and if we had to carry on real war against war, we shall have to begin with the children. School history books are full of past battles and war heroes, little mention of peace, social justice, nonviolent peace heroes. This leads students to develop values and perspectives that are inimical to peace and social justice, judge current peace activists as troublemakers and disruptors of social order. And social justice involves civil and human rights. The Universal Declaration should be posted in every school, every public place, and discussed on a regular basis as part of social studies. I bought one from the UN and had it framed and donated it to the library in Plymouth State. So that's hanging right now in the library of Plymouth State. I also did the same thing, and there's a copy hanging in the Holocaust Center at Keene State. And so having this displayed in every public building would be a really good thing. And it's something that the group who put this together is trying to have people do. And the thing about we also youth are a great untapped resource for the peace movement. And the thing about youth that makes them ideal peacemakers, they can think abstractly, they have high levels of energy, and they're idealistic. And so those three things combined make them really great potential for being peacemakers. Another one is establish a Department of Peace at the national level. And this would send a message to the world that the U.S. is serious about peace. Funds will be provided for research on best practices in peacemaking, peace building. Peace building is building long-term and sustainable pathways. So there's peacekeeping, peacemaking, and peace building. And oftentimes we just stop at peacemaking, which is the violent thing, piece of it, where we want to suppress maybe some people who are committing genocide, and we have to do that with a military force. But we often stop there and we don't take it further. We don't push the building. So that would be a central element instead of total reliance on peacekeeping. And instead of we also hear wars of the future, but we never hear peace of the future. It's like, in other words, it's a given that we're going to have wars. So we have to keep creating these weapons so that these wars can occur. So we can, we can begin to envision peace if we have a department status. And then we can do research and interventions and so forth and catalog our results and so forth. A Department of Peace would help turn the U.S. from a culture of war to a culture of peace, a pretty worthy pursuit. So this is a review by Afshan Huma. She's a peace studies teacher in Pakistan. She was a former student of mine at the Pakistani Education Leadership Group in Keene State. They came 10 years, 20 to 40 Pakistanis came for 10 years and took classes in the summer at Plymouth State. It was a very diplomatic citizen diplomacy effort by the State Department at the time, till they canceled it. Anyway, she said, she has some nice things to say about that, and so I won't read them, but she gave a very positive review. She's a very active peace educator in Pakistan, and she's really building that movement there. So one of my favorite quotes: a Native American grandfather talking to his young grandson tells the boy he has two wolves inside of him struggling with each other. The first is the wolf of peace, love, and kindness. The other is the wolf of fear, greed, and hatred. Which wolf will win, grandfather? Asked the young boy. Whichever I feed. And you know what we're feeding right now in this country. And so that's, So I think, how's that, Amy?
That was amazing. We were worried Leo had too much, but he really zipped through that. Okay. Thank you. So we can get into conversation. So folks, there are a few things coming into the chat, and I have some questions, of course, but also go ahead and raise your hand if you want to get into the conversation. It's helpful if you raise your digital hand because there's enough folks here that I don't actually see all of you. I wanted to start with a question, particularly given the timing here. Does your book, or do you have things to say about the importance of women in peacemaking, peace building types of scenarios?
I went to a workshop. I was invited to participate in a workshop at The Hague in their 100-year conference on peace, and it was called Personal Disarmament. But I went to a lot of workshops, and one of the workshops I went to was called "If Women Rule the World," and there was a panel of women heads of state from around the world, from Asia, Africa, Europe, and so forth. And it was a very impressive presentation. I mean, it was very inspiring. And as I read on afterwards, I realized that all those countries that have women heads of state also have child-centered policies, pro-health care, pro-education, parental leave. And it just so happens that when women, dominate in political power, that's what happens because they bring those values to government. and they actually make policies based upon those values. So yeah, I don't think we could do it without women. And it's interesting that these women said, we're not about just women. We also need a few good men. And I said, so that's my motto. We're going to have the world, women are going to change with the help of a few good men. So yeah, I don't think it's going to happen unless we do, unless women have gain more power in every sphere, uh, education, government, business, across the board. And the thing is, not all women are very peaceful. But the idea, but the point is, when you put more of them in positions of power, more of them will have those values.
Yeah,
So,
this is not a 100% rule kind of a thing. Oops.
right, exactly,
Again.
exactly.
There's also, I know, quite a bit of research around when after major conflict, when the women are included in the process to rebuild and to try to come up with a way forward, it's like significantly more likely that the peace will hold.
Right,
But it's a shocking number. It's like only 3% or something of the folks in these rooms are usually women.
right,
So
right.
it's a clear place where we could be relatively simple and make really, have the potential to make a big difference.
I think encouraging young women to go into peace studies would be very important because that's something that they can just take with them in different areas and so forth. So yeah, I think we really have to do a lot with that.
Great. Professor Evans, I'm going to let you unmute, see if that worked. There you go.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you, Leo, for that immersive and thought-provoking overview of the concepts surrounding peace and peacemaking. Jane Addams' quote really resonated with me because I do not think that we should be sort of inactive bystanders. It is imperative that if we do witness things that are causing a violent result, that we insert ourselves, whether it's by setting an example or actually directly. Two things are in my mind that I'm pondering right now. And the first is because you did cite many faith-based texts, and I am a Christian and I grew up reading the Bible and know the tenets that are in that book. And so the first question is it the duty of the person who is trying to bring about peace or the peacemaker to only be concerned with their individual action, or are they also supposed to try to convince the person who is the truculent aggressor to become peaceful as well? Or is it both?
Well, Tim Snyder says there is no freedom without solidarity. And that's a pretty powerful statement that we have to collaborate with others in these efforts so that we're not alone. We really have to do, we have to also reach out to people who don't agree with us. And I have seen so many incidents of bigots and white supremacists who have been totally changed just by developing relationship with a peacemaker. It's amazing the transformation. So I think I look at some of these people as pieces of marble that haven't been carved yet, and I think that I wouldn't give up hope on anyone, but certainly collaborating with like-minded people builds the momentum for greater peace, I think. So yeah.
Thank
And
you.
also, like Howard Zinn said, there's no small thing that doesn't mean something. Even if you do the smallest thing, if everyone does a little bit, it has a strong cumulative effect. And so again, I hear students say, "Oh, I'm just one person. What can I do?" And that's such a prevalent attitude that this sense of powerlessness and empowering people is something that we really need to do a lot of, especially in education, I think.
Thank you so much. I do agree with that. And that is a great transition to my second very brief question. With the very hostile, heinous talk that we hear in governments saying, threatening other governments with violence if that government doesn't yield to them. I'm really concerned about our youth and the example that our governmental leaders are setting for them and how to handle and resolve conflict. What advice would you have for that?
Well, one of the reasons that people tend to vent their impulses and not filter them is social media with the small sound bites and the propaganda and the indoctrination. And so teaching literacy in schools at a very young age, even kid preschool, would do a lot to help people to sort through that kind of stuff. People are believing things that are totally untrue, and somehow we have to be able to counter that. And again, the education through mass media literacy is very important. Of course, we do that in college anyway with students by having them, debate and dialogue and so forth. But the idea is that we're not reaching mass audiences with media literacy. We are being overcome with social media, and that's really a very dangerous path that we're going down because we don't even believe what we see. So that's very scary, I think.
Yeah. Great questions. And I love the saying on your screen there, Professor. That's excellent. Murray would like to join the conversation. I think I'm letting him go ahead.
Thank you. Hi, Amy, and hi, Leo, and thank you for your presentation. I am from Iran, and you can imagine how I feel these days.
Yeah, I know I can't imagine how you feel.
Yeah,
Not even, no.
thank you. The thing I wanted to say is, it may sound weird, but I hear when I speak with peace-seeking Iranian veterans from inside Iran, and I tell them I feel frustrated with the peace community in the global north, who are mostly white, and they are deeply well-meaning, but often ignorant of realities of the global south. And they tell me, Moji, just they are your friends. If you come back to Iran, you'll be executed. So don't appreciate whatever support you can get from them. And the basic meaning of in transliteration of what the communication means is go easy on the whites and the privileged in the global north, as long as they are not monsters.
Yeah.
And I'm just, on one hand, I feel very traumatized. And then when I come to well-meaning global north progressive gatherings, I see such level of naivete at one level that it drives me crazy. And then then my heart wants to say, shake them and say, wake up. The world, you are living in a global north in the shadow of huge weapons. You have this safety. And so, but on the other hand, I remember what my fellow Iranian peace lovers say, go easy on these well-meaning folks. So comments, please.
Yeah, I hear you. I mean, we Americans are not noted for their cosmopolitanism. we tend to be relatively sheltered geographically and so forth. So we do have a lot to learn. And again, my experience with the Pakistanis was very enlightening. I learned so much from them, and saw the limits of my American lenses when we talked, when we when we had conversations and so forth, and I have made hundreds of friends of the Pakistanis since they've left, and to me that's been a really eye opener, and I hope that we would try to have as many of those kinds of experiences with people from different parts of the world to open people's eyes. I teach a course on multicultural parenting and how parents raise children throughout the world and so forth. And it's my students are fascinated by things like co-sleeping, things that we don't do here. And so that idea and now we are in a situation where diversity, equity, and inclusion are considered to be unacceptable. And so we're going the exact opposite way that we really have been going, with spreading ourselves a little bit more, and so forth. And so yeah, I totally agree with you, but I do agree that we have to connect with people uh, wherever they might be. I mean, if whether they are white or not, and so forth. I think we still have to build coalitions and collaboration and so forth. So, uh, but I also hear what you're saying. You're coming with a different lens than maybe the rest of us are. So I understand that.
I actually want to build on that because John was wondering if you could say more, Moji, about be more specific about what kind of naivete that you see and that you are, concerned with. Would you say a little more on that? Go ahead.
There are so many examples that I can give, and the to in terms of specifics is a general thing about about Muslims, and I, as a Sufi Muslim, I often get praised for being a good Muslim. And every time I hear the good Muslim, I remember Nazi Germany and the good Jew. And I'm saying, I am a Sufi because I believe in what I believe. And often I have been told by deeply well-meaning global North privileged white folks that it's so good that you are a Sufi. Sufis are nice. And I hear the other side of that, the shadow of that praise. And so 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 that's just one example. The other example is that the violence in terms of justifying the genocide, for example, in Gaza, that where are the Palestinians that are nonviolent? How come their voice is not how come they are not more prevalent? And a subsection of this is good Muslims should pacify the terrorist Muslims. I'm kind of exaggerating the terms, but it's painful to hear, to be told that, oh, I'm so glad you're a peaceful, you don't want to kill people, you're not a terrorist, but you have the responsibility to go and civilize the savages. the Muslim savages. And I'm saying no, as you know, as white Christians, you need to go to your savage so-called Christian churches who are right now saying, good, Armageddon has been started. So these are some of the examples. If I am given platform to speak, to be the voice of the voiceless, and I've given talks here at New Hampshire Peace Action. So, but you know, people from the global South, like my voice, is the voice of the voiceless. We need to be given platforms to speak, and not to be a Uncle Tom, not to be the token civilized Muslim, but to be who we are, and then for people who are civilized, so-called in the global North, to notice, wow, we are complicit in lots of injustice. So sorry for my pained answers. Thank you.
Thank you for sharing, Moji. That was helpful. Leo, did you want to say anything?
He's in a very difficult position, and I just can't. I mean, I can't even imagine how he's functioning day to day with this over his head. You know, I don't know. I don't know what to say.
I will say that to an obviously far less degree, Moji, I can relate and have to work myself to be kind to people who, you know, show up and say, hey, I didn't notice that the US was kind of nasty to people in other places. And I want to say, have you been paying any attention? So it can be a tricky thing to, you know, want to be open to all and everyone who's ready to see things, just to welcome them in. But it can be really, I sometimes have to bite my own tongue, but saying, where have you been? So I like Leo's saying, I doubt I can imagine how tough it is for you. I see another hand up. Why don't we let's see what Dottie would like to share. Go ahead, Dottie.
Part of what I wanted to speak to what was just said about the construction of who's bad and who's good, and that there are certain things that fit into a narrative. So the angry Muslim person or the angry Black person, without doing an analysis of how we got to that point. And I think that this kind of pitting people within group against each other, you're good, they're bad, it only serves the people in positions of power. It only serves those from the dominant culture, and it hurts us within our group. So we understand that there's a lot of diversity within our group, and we have come to kind of appreciate that. But outside groups see us as kind of in this very singular way. And if you're not this way, then you must not be like them, the rest of them. And when in reality, when you're within the group. So I think that that's the complicated piece is who are we demonizing at this point? What's the end game of being demonized? And what impact it has on even ever being able to have a culture where there is a culture of peace. Is to be able to understand that there are multiple people representing multiple groups. And I just feel for the situation that we're in right now because it's so painful to just watch over and over and over people being pitted against each other. And it only serves the people in power, reinforces their power in a way that they are able to do things and get away with things while we're bickering among ourselves. So I just worry about that demonization. So my heart goes out to the speaker before.
That was so well said, Dottie. That was so well said. Leo, do you want to add anything?
Yeah, Dottie is a source of wisdom for me all the time. And so I really was pleased to have her here with us today.
Yeah, something, to allow difference, to allow for disagreement, to even allow for healthy conflict. Wow, that is something we really need to get better at. Yeah, thank you for bringing that up. I think it's so important. I'm looking in chat. Oh, and Moji would like to speak again. I'm going to let Moji do that, and I'll look in chat.
Thank you. Sorry if I'm talking too much, but I want to give another example of the kind of global north naivete or unconscious internalized savagery that I was part of a women against NATO group, and I gave a talk about neither east nor west, which is Dr. Mossadegh, who was overthrown in 1953 by the CIA and MI6, that he said neither east nor west as a building the foundation for the non-aligned movement. And these folks had this thing about this panel discussion about non-alignment as peace, and I was their token Iranian, and in their case, they are a feminist group, men. I was a token Iranian man that I was aware that I was being used as a token male in this case, but when I afterwards, when I tried to bring to their attention the feminists, the progressive feminists in the global north being having their own culture of we are so cool that we are even allowing a Muslim from Iran to be a speaker in one of our feminist functions. And I told them about colonial feminism. Colonial feminism is an example of the kind of feminism that ends up harming my sisters and my nieces and women in the Islamic world, because it's a form of feminism that is so privileged by the white feminists who are unconscious of their internalized racism. And so in terms of examples, I can give you horror stories. But the voice of the peace from the global south is drowned right now by the rumbles of the bombs and missiles. And therefore the only voices that are heard are, for example, the Shah's son, who successfully begged Israel and US to attack Iran. And then Iranians who are so angry at that regime, appropriately angry at that so-called religious regime, that they are happy for their own country being ravaged by global north bombs and missiles. So these are the kinds of voices, the internal Iranian voices of peace are the ones that need to be given platforms to be heard and to be supported. And for that, Leo, I would like to invite you, I'll send the link again in the chat, to become a non-Iranian friend or advisor to
Be happy to.
Thank you. And also you, Amy, I would like to invite you to be a non-Iranian advisor or friend of the National Peace and Democracy Coalition of Iran.
Oh,
I'll
great.
send it in the chat. Thank you. Sorry if I advertise too much for what I'm doing, but I'm doing it out of desperation to do something about standing up to this, as I chanted last Saturday, internal repression, external aggression, external aggression, internal repression. So we see a monster called Trump, who boasted this afternoon about how successful the US has been. And so that the kind of voice that is a counter to that voice is not heard.
Yeah.
And it needs to be supported. So sorry. Thank you.
No, it's okay. I'll make sure, Moji, that you and Leo are connected. Yes. Yeah, I'll follow up. Thanks for sharing. I wanted to also, there's another comment made in the chat that I'll sort of turn into a question. Someone, I think it was Douglas, was saying someone who is a teacher has gotten in trouble. He was saying, and there's, I also have a friend who, and this is years ago, in a New Hampshire school, did a program on UN and was almost fired because complaints parents who didn't want teaching about the UN. There's a lot of, there's not a whole lot of space right now where we really need it in these, to bring this information, these principles, etc., to young folks. Do you have thoughts on opening that and getting more, making it more possible? Go ahead, Leo.
Yeah, a little story. I wanted to have the UN flag fly at Plymouth State. So I went to the literature, and where the literature says everything about we're global, we have this global view and all this kind of stuff. And so I brought it to the student senate, and they voted to exhibit the UN flag at campus. I brought it to the faculty, they voted to do it also. The president said there will be no UN flag flying on this campus. Well, I started carrying a UN flag at graduation. And the president was so mad at me, he couldn't even talk. And so now I don't know what the status of that is right now because I'm semi-retired. But that was a big thing. It was saying, no UN flag will be flying on this campus. There are many examples of universities throughout the country where the UN flag is actually flying on campus. So, but that was a battle. That was a huge battle.
Well, a lot of us really appreciate those who are trying to, be in classrooms talking about issues of peace and justice at a time when it's really tricky. New Hampshire Peace Action's been thrilled to restart our youth intern program, which is more college age, but still ways, as you were saying, to engage more with younger folks, some more intergenerational collaborations happen. Feel, and they're out there, care about this. So let's see. Do you want to say any more about, let me put a link to your book in the chat. I see not, some folks will need to leave. Let's make sure people see that. And also, is there any room left in the longer class presentation that you're going to give to World Beyond War, Leo?
I'm sorry.
I know that you're speaking to World Beyond War.
Yeah.
Is there still room in that, or is that full? I might be sold out.
Oh, I there was, last time I heard there were 4 openings.
Okay. And I will also mention this talk will be on YouTube pretty much as soon as we're done. And also, though, that Leo, happy to share he has an extensive slide. He's willing to share that with people too. So we can help folks connect and get that if that would be useful. And then I wondered if you might say a little bit more about some of the actions that you talk about, citizen action type things that people could do, particularly maybe the Department of Peace. I know that was really active for a while, a campaign for that, and I haven't heard about it much for a
I
while.
think Dennis Kucinich was a champion of that.
Yeah.
And I think it didn't make the vote in Congress. So like the arms agreement too. The code of conduct for arms, that didn't make it either. So, and the School of the Americas didn't make it either. That's still going. So it's really hard to get some of these things through Congress. Very, very difficult. And the people don't give up. They keep coming back and coming back. And so that's what you have to do. We just can't rest. We can never rest. So as much as we can do with that. As I said, I started a peace studies minor at Plymouth State. We had we changed the whole name of Riviera University at one time to a peace college when it was called college. And so people can do stuff like that, and that's how it gets spread. I still hear from students who have taken courses with me and Ray in the past, and how they're doing peace studies work in some of the classes they're teaching. So this stuff has a way of spreading, but we have to keep at it, and we have to find ways of really making it spread a lot wider, I think, being very creative.
Great. That's great. Sorry, I'm looking in the chat. I was going to mention, something that we feel really good about is that over the past 10 to 20 years, there has been so much more research and information literature out of peace and about it being, for instance, the work out of Harvard that nonviolent resistance is actually more effective than violent resistance at making change.
Yeah.
For a long time, a lot of us were kind of saying, we know this is better, it feels better, it's got to be better, but we didn't have the research to back it up, and now we do. And it just seems like that should really further help our program, more interest. What are you finding? Is that the case?
Because those are facts. Chenoweth was the lead researcher in nonviolence, looking at whether the nonviolence achieved its goals better than violence had, and by a significant number of amount or whatever, the nonviolence has achieved more of its goals than violence has. So we have facts. And it's really important to have facts, because without facts, you're really in a fuzzy area. And that's one of the principles of the King Center is gather your facts, make sure you know what you're talking about, and have some good solid evidence to take forward. So yeah, absolutely, that's landmark research.
Yeah. Yeah, we've also had folks on this program like Mel Duncan, who helped to co-found Nonviolent Peace Force, who now, and tried things and they have been so successful. And it just seems like if we can continue to get the word out and help people see these alternatives, because it seems like a lot of the time people say to us, well, what can we do other than war? And now to be able to have an answer to that seems like this could be sort of a turning point of real.
Too many people see nonviolence as passivity.
Right.
It's exactly the opposite. And some people associate it with cowardice. It's just the opposite, because when you put yourself into a position of using nonviolence, you are putting yourself in jeopardy.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so again, Gandhi said that nonviolence was the most powerful weapon devised by the ingenuity of man. And that needs to be again brought out, because people just don't know what nonviolence is.
Yeah, so thank you for helping us do that, Leo. Thank you for the book. Thank you for your time. Thanks to everyone who came. I'm going to say a few words before we wrap up here. I want to point out that this series is free and it is open to everyone, regardless of financial status, but we really welcome your financial support. nhpeaceaction.org/donate is where to do that. Also, here's a link again, to us and to the book that was discussed tonight. That's nhpeaceaction.org, and the link is too much for me to say, so that's in the chat. Also, again, tonight's program and most of our past programs that we've done on Zoom are on our YouTube channel. So go on YouTube and search for New Hampshire Peace Action and look under Live, the Live tab, and you'll find now years worth of programs, and some of them really, well, we think all of them are great. So we hope you'll check that out. And please stay in touch with us. Learn about what we're working on and what events. And here's, I'll give you a brief what's coming right up. We have our vigils for a just peace in Palestine and the Middle East, actually, peace in the Middle East continuing. Wednesday, March 11th at 2 p.m. we're at Rep. Pappas's office in Dover. Thursday, March 12th at noon, people gather at City Plaza, Concord, New Hampshire. Wednesday, March 18th at 2, we shift to Senator Shaheen's office, also on Central Ave in Dover. This Thursday, 3 nights, March 12th, 7 p.m., we welcome back Joseph Gerson. This is part of our Global Power Dynamics in-depth series, and he talked about Russia last time. This time, we're going to focus on China. And then we're going to be having Chaz come in. We are rescheduling him to talk more in the Middle East. Sunday, March 15th at 1:30, the Selma Remembrance Event, Freedom's Unfinished Journey, is happening at the St. James Episcopal Church in Keene. We are co-sponsoring that. Our next Peace and Justice conversation via Zoom is Monday, March 23, 7 p.m. And that is going to be on Korea's fight for sovereignty with Dr. Simone Cho. Again, thank you so much to Leo. We really appreciate your time and all the amazing work that you've done. And thank you all for joining us. We really appreciate your engagement. Important to talk and focus on them, and not drop what we know is so critical to continue to discuss. And I hope to see you again soon. Good night, everyone.
Thank you.
Take care.